Johnny Adair, the former terrorist widely believed to be fueling the internecine loyalist violence in the province, is back behind bars. Will this restore calm? Good evening. Tonight, Peter Mandelson said he was confronting the dark side of Northern Ireland society when he announced he had suspended Johnny Adair's licence. As we go on air, we're hearing reports of trouble on the Shankill Road in Belfast. I'll be asking the Northern Ireland Secretary what happens next. Also, wanted ideas for the Tory manifesto. What if the party faithful comes up with the unthinkable, that the problem's not the policies, but the pilot? And freedom to surf. As Alta Vista admits it can't make unmetered access to the internet pay, is British Telecom really the villain? BT faces an internet provider, and as they say, it's good to talk. Email us now via our website www.bbc.co.uk/Newsnight, and I'll put a couple of your points too. In the past hour, the UDA leader Johnny Adair has been arrested and returned to prison. After days of bitter loyalist infighting, 2 murders in the streets of Belfast and growing calls for action to restore order, the Northern Ireland minister has tonight acted in dramatic fashion. In his statement, Mr Mandelson said, "My priority is public safety, and I cannot give freedom to an individual intent on abusing it. I am satisfied that this particular individual has breached the terms of his licence." I'm joined now by our correspondent Liz McKean, who's in Belfast. Liz McKean, what's the latest tonight?
Well, we understand that Johnny Adair was picked up a short time ago. He was arrested on the Shankill Road, where he was a passenger in, I'm told, a red Cavalier car. Now, this is being called a special police operation. It was carried out by armed RUC troops. And I gather that the original aim was to arrest Johnny Adair at his home in the Lower Shankill estate. He'd gone out for a drive, so he was picked up on the Shankill Road itself, scene of so much of the tensions of the last few days. Now, latest reports from the scene are that there are a lot of men on the streets, about 100 men in the area around his house. Initially, things were much more tense. Camera crews were warned away from the area, told not to go anywhere near. They've since been able to approach. Troops are also surrounding the house, but my latest information is that the atmosphere on the Shankill is calm. Now, we're just hearing, I've got reports here that Billy Hutchison of the Progressive Unionist Party, the UVF's political wing, said he now feared the feud would escalate, and I hope he was arrested on the evidence that he broke the law. Do we have any specifics on why he was arrested? Well, we have the statement which came out of the Northern Ireland office this evening, where the Northern Ireland Secretary Peter Mandelson made it very clear that Johnny Adair was being arrested because he was judged to have broken the terms of his licence. What happens next will be quite interesting, because Johnny Adair has simply been thrown back behind bars without any trial at all, underneath the terms of his licence. He's clearly been judged to have broken them. Now, he does have one option open to him. He can appeal to the Sentencing Commission. If that appeal isn't successful, it's all up for Johnny Adair. He must serve out the rest of his original sentence for directing terrorism. We'll be coming back to you, Liz, for more later. Well, I'm joined now from Hillsborough by the Northern Ireland Secretary, Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson, first of all, could pick up that point that Liz McKean made. What is the process now? He was originally serving a 16-year sentence for directing terrorism. He was released after 5.5 years. Is he in now for a substantial period?
Well, he is in indefinitely, but of course it is open to him to apply again to the Sentences Review Commission for a further early release. But obviously they will take into account the circumstances in which he has been recalled to prison by me today.
Now, we understand, as you will have heard and you know yourself, that there's over 100 men out there at the moment protesting. Do you think that there will be further arrests in the next 24 hours?
Well, anyone who is guilty of causing an affray or involved in any criminal activity faces arrest by the police, like everyone else in every other part of the United Kingdom. As far as other early release prisoners are concerned, I examine each individual on their merits. If I receive information from the police, as I have done in the case of Mr Adair, that they have contradicted the terms of their release licence, then the law or the rules will be applied to them as they have been applied to Mr Adair this evening.
Now, Billy Hutchinson, last night in this programme, called for mediation. He is now saying tonight that he believes with Johnny Adair's arrest that the feud will intensify. He expects attacks against his party, the PUP and the UVF. Is that something that concerns you?
Well, obviously, if that would happen, it does concern me very much. I think that what we will see is an immediate sort of demonstration, protest, possibly sporadic violence by the minority hardcore of Mr. Adair's supporters within his organisation. But equally, I think there will be very many more members of his organisation who will breathe a sigh of relief. They recognise that he has thoroughly compromised himself in his behaviour, and I think that beyond the immediate reaction to his recall to prison, I think people will want to step back and draw breath and realise that the feud that they're engaged in is utterly self-defeating, and that the Loyalist community, which has been pulled apart by this feuding, now has a chance to unite and to rally round, and that's what I hope they will do.
Well, earlier on this evening, among the politicians you met Gary McMichael of the UDP, the political wing of that particular faction. He did very explicitly say after he left Hillsborough that he had no idea you were about to make an arrest. Will the UDP be part, do you think, of the mediation process?
I think they will in due course, and it is the case that I didn't disclose any of this information to Mr. McMichael when I saw him. It wouldn't have been proper for me to do so, so he had no idea that I was acting as I did. But I think the UDP, which has broadly played a very sobering, very responsible role in the peace process in Northern Ireland, will want to work with their counterparts in the PUP in promoting the cause of mediation. And they'll do so for this reason. You know, over the last few days, people living on the Shankill, decent, honourable members of the Loyalist community, have spoken about their shame about recent events. People who have an enormous pride in the Shankill, who have enjoyed living there, enjoy shopping there, have now instead speak not of their pride, but of their fear. Now, one of the principal sources of that fear, a man who, with his associates, has been inciting so much violence in recent days, has been removed. And I think it is that action which now opens the way to the community as a whole to come together and to promote the cause of peace, to put this feuding behind them once and for all.
But there seems to be two different elements to this. Last night on Newsnight, you said that this was a kind of mafia rump of the Loyalist paramilitary community who were really carrying out a drugs war. Now, politicians in Northern Ireland will also, local politicians in Northern Ireland will say it's because the UFF, the UDA, feels much less enfranchised than the UVF do through the PUP in the Northern Ireland Assembly. And that there lies the problem. That wing feels it has no power, and that is part of the problem. Now, these are two quite different things. One criminal, one political. Which is it?
Well, you're describing different symptoms of the same situation. You have different organisations vying for an advantage. It's a struggle to see who can end up on top, who can demonstrate the most muscle. Also, who can enjoy the greatest proceeds from racketeering and from trafficking in drugs. All these are different symptoms of the same feuding that has been going on. And what all these people have got to do, and the leaders of those organisations and of the Loyalist side of the community have got to do, is to bring people together, to find a way of mediating their differences, not instantly, and I'm not naive in imagining that they'll be able to do this, to resolve all their differences, but to find a way of confronting their differences and mediating their way through them without resorting to the sort of violence that we've seen in recent days. I believe that they are capable of doing that. I think there are enough people who recognise that what they have been doing and what they've been seeing is utterly self-defeating, and that for their own sake, as well as for the greater good of Northern Ireland, because we have all got to confront this black side of society here, that rump of paramilitarism, which is like a sort of mafia-like virus in Northern Ireland society. We've all got to do our bit, to make our contribution, to confront it, to face it down, and to end it once and for all. And I'm absolutely passionate about this, and I'm determined that the government and the police will play their part in ending this black side of Northern Ireland society, but it takes the community as a whole to unite, to rally around the forces of progress, of law and order, to make sure that we really do create now the decent civic society which it is within our grasp to create in Northern Ireland, and put an end, to put behind us once and for all that ugly side, the conflict, the violence that has disfigured Northern Ireland for so many decades.
Peter Madison, thank you very much indeed. And I'm now joined from Belfast by Ken McGuinness, the UP MP, who is their security spokesman. Ken McGuinness, what do you make of tonight's arrest?
I think that tonight's arrest will be welcomed by many of the decent, good people in the Shankill area and around that part of Belfast. People who will be fearful to speak of it, but who will be relieved, and will be more relieved day by day as the directors of mafia-style violence are removed from their midst. But it mustn't end here. The government and the police, I'm sorry to say, have been far too late in taking action. It was on your programme, I'm sure, a couple of months ago that I named the person who is returned to prison tonight, and indicated that control of drugs trafficking was of much greater interest than, I think I put it, than God and Ulster. And that's the reality of the situation. We're faced with a mafia undercurrent that is dealing with illegal liquor, running shebeens, illegal drinking dens. They're trafficking in drugs. They're engaged in prostitution, sometimes using young girls under 16. I'm told, I've no on-the-spot knowledge, but I'm told young girls as young as 13. This is not normal in Northern Ireland. This is something that has to be stopped. And it's time we had, if I can term it, Elliot Ness type activity to get rid of the illegal dens and the drug trafficking and the abuse of young girls.
The problem, of course, for loyalists who take the legal path in pursuit of their beliefs, people like you, people who are MPs and so forth, is that what has been going on in Northern Ireland in the last few weeks, indeed in the last few months, besmirches in a way the whole of loyalism and by association unionism. Now, it's not just about putting this man behind bars. There are families out their homes tonight. Can you, in a sense, recreate a community, or is it divided forever?
There will always be, in every society, there is a dark side. We've seen that whether it's in terms of political violence in Northern Ireland or football violence in the part of the United Kingdom where you live, but there's always a dark side. But the majority of people at least have the ability to speak out and take action. Here, the intimidation is such that decent people tend to go along with the throwaway phrases. The agreement isn't working. Well, the people who say that will take some comfort tonight, perhaps, from the fact that we do have a degree of violence on our streets. But they are a minority. At the end of the day, we had to do something about the political violence, and the fact that mafia types fill the vacuum is not a reflection on the people of Northern Ireland. It's not a reflection on the people who sit in the Northern Ireland Assembly, because they have no authority in terms of security. It is a matter for central government. I don't want to throw mud at this stage, and I'm not trying to, but it is really the responsibility of central government, of the Secretary of State, of the Chief Constable and the RUC, and of the backup that and of the GOC who provides backup. And that's going to be very important over the next few weeks, perhaps even the next few months. But we must get to grips with that undercurrent, that subculture that is going to exploit the political differences, the political fears, not because they have got a well thought out political agenda or a political alternative, but because they're greedy and they want to capitalise on the situation.
Ken McGuinness, thank you very much
indeed.
Thank
you, Kirsty.
Now, earlier this evening, John White, chairman of the Ulster Democratic Party, gave his reaction to Johnny Adair's arrest and his activities leading up to today.
He argued all along there was a media, hyping up his profile. And, like from Cree, for example, he was entitled to go there as a loyalist, and he didn't see any harm in it. He was doing nothing illegal, and he still maintains that he has done nothing illegal.
Does his detention have any wider implications, do you think?
Well, I think it certainly may contribute to inflaming the situation, make the situation worse. You already have a very angry leadership within the EFF because of what's going on, and now they will see that one of their key personnel at one time has now been victimised and brought back to amaze, and it may make things worse.
John White, well, I'm joined again by Liz McKean. Now, there's no sign of that trouble on the Shankill Road abating, and we did hear earlier about the concerns on UVF and PUP attacks. What are you hearing from the streets?
Well, at the moment, Kirsty, we are hearing that things are calm, but they still remain extremely tense. There's a group of about 100 men, supporters of Johnny Adair, surrounding his house. There are also armed police there and troops. The atmosphere is extremely tense. But I've spent the day on the Shankill Road. I've had a chance to talk to people all about this issue of prisoner releases and have individual prisoners broken the terms of their licences.
You can see the armoured vehicles outside there now as we speak.
Right, well, that's the scene there this evening. I mean, you can see there that it is quiet. There are a huge amount of troops in that area of the Shankill. They were brought in last night for the first time in 2 years to keep the two sides of loyalism apart and to try to stop what began yesterday morning as two murders turning into a bloodbath. But there is no doubt, to return to the point I was making earlier, that there will be people within loyalism, even within Johnny Adair's own organisation, who will be quite happy to see him off the streets. And this is a voice of loyalism that we hardly ever hear. And indeed, these people are too afraid to speak on camera. But I've spoken to people at the very close to the centre of this organisation who believe that enough's enough, that in a situation where two sides of a community are at war, both sides are bound to lose, and there will undoubtedly be a great deal of relief in the Shankill tonight, not least from those families, some 30 in the last 3 days, who've been ordered out of their homes by the UDA, and some of them are sleeping rough with relatives while they're waiting to be rehoused.
And tomorrow then an immediate push for mediation.
Yes, I think there will now be renewed calls for mediation. I mean, people have been pressing for this all day, but there's also been, I think, a general acceptance that in the current climate, mediation won't work. The two sides of loyalism have simply forgotten how to speak each other, and it's going to take a very trusted figure to bridge that gap. But now that Johnny Adair has been taken off the streets, he is, if you like, a figurehead for the trouble that there's been over the last few days and weeks before that. I think that there will be a new atmosphere, and we can certainly expect renewed attempts to get the mediation going.
Liz McKean, thank you very much indeed. Now, William Hague wants to grab some attention for the Tories this autumn, and he's planning on doing it with his pre-manifesto document out in 2 weeks' time. The common sense revolution was last year's Conservative thing. This will be, in effect, a wish list of policies, enough to demonstrate their seriousness, but without giving too much away. And a bit like Labour before them, they're giving the grassroots their say over this manifesto. But with the Conservatives failing to make ground in the polls, William Hague needs to pull off the old political trick, reassuring his heartland voters while wooing the swing voters. John Campner has been to real Tory territory to look at the pressures and the policies.
In the heart of Suffolk, Constable country, they're comfortable with traditional Conservative values. Soon, party members here, as across the UK, will get the chance to press for their pet policies, and they know their minds.
I'd like to see the Euro situation sorted out.
Health is really a very big priority.
Support the Union, support the monarchy, restore the sovereignty of Parliament.
In the heart of Westminster, a far cry from the rural idyll, at Conservative HQ they're dusting down their policies, preparing for the big launch. The War Room is the hub of activity. On September the 5th, the 32-page pre-manifesto document will be sent to the party's 300,000 members. Labour did the same before the last election. Activists were invited on a North Korean-style ballot paper to put a tick in the yes box, marking their approval. The Tories claim theirs will be different. Members will also be asked to list their favourite policies in order, and those policies are being changed as they go along. A year ago, they were on the ropes, desperate to show they had new ideas. So they came up with the common sense revolution and their 5 guarantees. Now they're in better shape, they're rethinking strategy. Their new document drops some promises and comes up with others. They'll still pledge not to join the single currency in the next Parliament, but they've been worried that people think they're obsessed, so they won't make too much of it. They'll promise to cut welfare bills, but everyone does that, and it's not a great